good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Veronica Peltis, and I've been serving as an IOC Secretary for 2 terms, as EVA Partners Executive Committee member, and as a Vice President of the International Evaluation Academy. It is my pleasure to be the moderator of today's sixth Evaluation Dialogue, which is a part of a monthly dialogue of Eval for Action campaign. This particular dialogue is held in the celebration of International Day of Education, which will be celebrated on 24th of January. And this reminds us that learning lies at the heart of our field. As Thomas Schwand, a great evaluation thinker who passed away last month, so often reminded us, evaluation is not just something we do, it is a moral and civic practice, which demands to ask not only what works, but what matters, for whom and under what conditions. And that kind of work can only be sustained whenever every generation is supported to keep learning, questioning, and growing. Just a few quick reminders as we go. If you're joining us via LinkedIn Live, you can continue the conversation there by posting your reflections and questions in the comments. Here on Zoom, please use Q&A function to share any questions. And if you prefer to follow the discussion in any other language, you're very welcome to use the Zoom interpretation and translation features. Today's questions for the field expert is, are we educating evaluators of every generation for the future? We'll start with a short introduction to set the question of our context for our theme. Then we'll invite our panelists to share their initial positions, where they stand on this question and what it means to them. We'll open things up in a live debate, starting with a live poll and followed by a panel exchange around a bold statement designed to challenge our assumptions and spark reflection. From there, we'll dive deeper in the key themes of the day, from education pathways and professional development to AI, intergenerational learning, and the future of the evaluation workforce. Then we'll turn to you, our audience, to hear your reflections, questions, and perspectives. And finally, we'll close with each panelist offering one takeaway or action for all of us to carry forward. That's the journey we'll take together over the next hour. Let's now meet our panelists and hear about why educating evaluators of every generation for the future is critical from their perspectives. Let's start with Aki. Aki Yonehara is a professor of sociology department at Hoyo University, specializing in participatory evaluation for human well-being in the fields of formal and non-formal education and community development. She serves as Vice President of Japanese Evaluation Society and Evaluation Advisor at Japan International Cooperation Agency, Asian Pacific Cultural Center for UNESCO, and other institutes. Please, Aki, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here today. I think this is a great opportunity for us to discuss evaluation education for the future generation on this International Day of Education. Well, educating evaluators is definitely a central question to me as a university professor. And also, nurturing the evaluative thinking is very much the matter to me. However, the evaluation education today has a lot of issues in terms of its approach, purpose, target, and so on. So I think we are going to discuss about these things for the next 1 hour. And I'm very much excited at talking about this important topic and sharing opinions with my respectful colleagues here and audiences from all over the world. Thank you. Veronica, you are muted.
Many thanks. Thank Thank you, Aki. And the next is Yatin. Yatin Divakar is an evaluator and researcher focusing on institutionalization of evaluation at country level. He is a co-founder of EvalYouth India. He has been actively involved in the promoting NEP's theme in the Asia-Pacific Regional Evaluation Strategy since its inception in 2020. Yatin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Veronica. Namaste, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. So here I'll give some candid response. Behind the scenes, most of us evaluators will agree that we are accidental evaluators. We have not been formally educated as evaluators. In the West, today, there are many master's programs for teaching evaluation to students and also PhD programs for further research. But in our area of the world, in the Asia Pacific region, there's hardly any academic program or regular education on evaluation. There are courses now starting up. Sri Lanka has a diploma program, but little else is happening. In India, where I'm from, most social work and development related degree programs also lack even a full-fledged course on evaluation. Forget a program in evaluation, but even a full-fledged 4 to 6 credit course in evaluation is lacking today. And it is generally a small module worth just 4 to 6 hours in an entire 2 years of coursework. In such a reality, the real question for me in my context is, are we even educating evaluators? The rest of the part, the second part of the question is like something in the future for me right now. And that is the context in which I am speaking today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yatin. It is also my great pleasure to introduce Celeste Guiana, who has served as a general coordinator of RELAC from 2021 to 2024 and is currently co-chair of Decolonizing Evaluation Systems Working at the International Evaluation Academy. She holds a PhD in public policy with a research focus on professionalization of evaluation in Latin America. She has over 20 years of experience as a university professor in planning and evaluation. Celeste, good to have you here.
Thank you, Veronica. I'm pleased to participate in this Future of Evaluation Dialogue cycle. It's a truly important topic to talk about, not only because of the International Day of Education, but as a political scientist, that I must say that we are in a moment of breakdown of the global order and weakened democracies. So yeah, it's a truly important topic to discuss in this moment, taking into account that evaluation, of course, support democracies. So happy to discuss it with my esteemed colleagues and participants. Over to you.
Glad to have you with us. Thank you, Celeste. And finally, Bianca Montrose Moorhead is a professor in the Research Methods, Measurement and Evaluation program at the University of Connecticut. She's a former chair of EvalYouth Global, a former elected board member of the American Evaluation Association, and a former vice chair of the International Society for Evaluation Education. Since 2023, she serves as co-editor-in-chief for the journal New Directions for Evaluation. Glad to have you with us, Bianca.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's a real honor to be here with you, Veronica, and the panelists. And so I just really appreciate the invitation. So I would describe my answer to this question as being both yes and no. And I think there are ways in which we can think about that. So on the yes side, I think we do a good job at developing particular kinds of competencies. So for example, I think we figured out how to help people develop their technical or their methodological competencies. I think we have figured out how to help people develop their management competencies. I think we've actually figured out how to help people understand the idea that ethics plays a role in evaluation. And I think if you look at the research on evaluation, both the research that's done in the United States as well as outside of the United States, you sort of see this pop up. But there's also the no side in my mind. I'm not sure we do a good job of preparing evaluators in all competency areas. So one area that I think we really struggle with is the idea of interpersonal and communication skills, right? How do you develop these? And how do we create space to develop these, right? When we're trying to learn all these technical methods, right? And I think that's part of the issue. And this research, shows that these skills are important. Many competency lists include interpersonal and communication skills. And yet, when I look around, a lot of the workshops and a lot of the trainings are on the technical stuff, right? So where do we do this? Where do we develop this, right? Another example, I'd sort of be remiss if I didn't talk about AI. And I think, when I look at the nature of the conversation, there's lots of use cases, tool sharing, tool selling, because there are vendors in this market. But I don't actually think those are all the things one needs to know. I wonder where are the education settings that develop our ability to use AI in evaluation responsibly, to know the difference between appropriate and inappropriate use of AI in evaluation, for example. So for the sake of time, I'll stop there, but I'm happy to talk more about this later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bianca. In fact, thank you all for the sparkling start. And I see and I hear that each of you is bringing a creative and thought-provoking perspective to this table. So let's change the pace a little. And we're about to launch a short live poll built around a provocative statement, something designed to challenge our assumptions and stretch our thinking as we explore how important it is to educate evaluators for the future. And the bold statement here that we're going to put into the live poll is, if we are not educating evaluators for the future, and that's referring a bit to what Bianca was saying about the no side, then we are quietly preparing them to become irrelevant. And you have the answers of agree, disagree, and nuanced view. Please go ahead and cast your vote now so we can see where the room stands. And for those joining us on the LinkedIn, we also invite you to share your view in the comments. The results keep on coming. This is very interesting. You people have decided to risk the nuanced view, which I hope will generate the Q&A session afterwards. Just a few seconds more, as we have reached over 60% of our participants answering, but let's just give a bit of time more. Thank you very much, everyone. I think we're going to be closing it for now. I'm not sure we managed to really provoke everyone, because it seems like 73% of you are agreeing with the provocative bold statement that we have the risk here of becoming irrelevant unless we're going to educate evaluators for the future. And this is obviously a very general statement, so we want to dive deeper into it. And we would like to bring those results and also the nuanced view eventually to our live debate and discussion here. So our esteemed panelists, I'd love to hear your views and what's your response to this. And let's start with Yatin this time.
Yes, thank you. Yes, to some extent, while I agree with the statement, my views are also slightly, I hope, are more nuanced. And as I said in my opening statement as well, So based on my experiences in the past, like when we have done the Evaluate Asia's winter school regularly for the last 6 years, it has shown us that unless we keep educating evaluators and preparing them for the future, they will become irrelevant. We have to train them in new methods. We have to focus on career building, connecting them with the ecosystem and so on. But more importantly, we cannot look at evaluation in vacuum today. Going by the evaluation theory tree, most of us must have looked at some point of time. The three major branches are use, value, and methods. And we need to underscore the importance of imbibing all of these together and focus on in our students why we are doing evaluation. We need to talk about that more. We need to talk about this transformational potential. This event, which is happening under the aegis of Eval for Action and Youth in Evaluation, assumes that we are evaluating for the 2030 agenda. But in today's world, we all see that it is being quietly being thrown out of the window. I don't know if you are on track for the SDGs today. So are we making evaluators aware of this situation? How are we going to use evaluation in this context, in this changing context? Evaluation today is being churned by AI, as Bianca was just mentioning, and we are not prepared for it. What value systems are changing today? What is going to change? What is the updated context in which evaluations are happening now with all of these tools and new techniques which are coming? And I will differ again, like as earlier also saying, West is a different scenario, but the middle income countries and the low income countries, developing countries, a different scenario. And people here, I'm part of a global WhatsApp group, mostly from people in Africa and Asia. And people here are still talking about methods. They want support in learning statistics. They want support in learning statistical tools. They want to understand qualitative methods. They want access to better resources to understand theory of change, indicators, and a lot of these basic things which we assume that as an evaluator, most of us know. And so I feel that on a global scale, on an average, evaluators are not really trained even in the present day methods and situation. So while our scenario is shifting, values are evolving, methods are weak across the global community. So when we combine all of this, what is exactly happening? Evaluation systems and evaluators themselves are not really like, how many of our experience is that when we are trying to explain to a non-evaluator, non-development sector professional, friend, acquaintance, relative, what we do, and we are not really able to explain it. People do not understand what is evaluation. Politicians do not appreciate evaluation. Bureaucracy in many countries is anti-evaluation. And in this reality, what is exactly happening? Are we already irrelevant? And are we just protecting ourselves from becoming completely obsolete? Is what I want to ask everyone today. Thank you.
Many thanks, Yatin. And this is really important what you're saying, because it also refers to what Bianca was saying before, that we are partially preparing everyone for the technical knowledge, but in this changing environment, how do we create a relevant regional scenarios of how do we prepare evaluators for what they need to be taking into account from cultural context in which we operate? So I very much agree. Bianca, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I so appreciate Yatin's response, and especially the point that I do think is really important, and that is, context matters, including in our answers to this, right? And so I just so appreciate that, Yatin. Thanks. So I would also describe my view as nuanced. Before I give my answer, let me also say that I don't think the risk of irrelevance comes solely from our education systems. And I think that's actually kind of important to understand. So another place that I think our risk of irrelevance can come from is, for instance, organizational structures or systems that constrain what is possible in evaluation, right? And I know I have certainly felt this myself. I wanted to do things in a particular way, right? The literature would suggest that this is the way to do it. But there was something about the system or structure that really constrained what I could do. And I know I talked to many evaluators who have had that experience. So that's one example. Another example, quite honestly and unabashedly, I think we spend a lot of time still even talking about what evaluation is. And while I appreciate those debates, I've gotten probably more steadfast in my belief that we've probably shied away from the idea of evaluation as involving judgment. And I think there's lots of reasons for that. But when I look at what's going on, I actually see that as actually one of the unique value propositions that evaluation as a field and evaluators bring. And so I think we actually can't shy away from that orientation much longer. So having said that now, though, evaluator education does play a role in whether or not we remain relevant. So, in the context in which I work, again, as I've said, we focus mainly on technical aspects of practice. And don't get me wrong, I think it is incredibly important to know how to do the technical stuff. But I often see this done as a piecemeal, like, come learn this technique, come learn this thing, right? And what I don't know that we do is teach when, why, for whom, how we might use this, right? And I think if we don't do that, we risk and helping people do that, we risk becoming irrelevant, right? And so I think no matter the generation, right? I think we have to learn the ability to do something that I sort of call think through evaluation, right? So, for example, why this particular approach and not another approach, right? And let me just say that thinking through evaluation is hard. It is hard to teach, and it is not easy to do in practice. I don't want to minimize that, but I think we have to do that. So, on the one hand, I can see why we haven't done a good job here, and we might be at risk. On the other hand, we have to keep trying. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I think it's really, really relevant what you're saying, because it's not only what Yatin just opened the floor with the regional context and multilateral agreements that are constantly changing reality of ours, but it's also that organizational reality and not shying away from the judgment while being rigidly integral with the ethics of the work of our profession. Thank you so much. Aki, could you take the floor?
Yeah, thank you. I am also taking a nuanced view of this statement. Maybe I'm going along with Yatin and Veronica's comment. I really appreciate your comment and I really enjoyed it. Well, I think it depends on the meaning of education. If the education means, educating technological or specialized skills and knowledge, just like Bianca pointed out, I have to say that the evaluators can be relevant without education. From the perspective of indigenous evaluation and participatory evaluation, I would like to say that the evaluators who are not always equipped with technological advanced methods can be relevant evaluators. Rather, the evaluators who are unfortunately overeducated with a certain bias may become irrelevant in the future generation. I think what to teach or what to educate is critically important for us to think. I assume that the evaluator's education has two layers. One is a fundamental layer and the other is a technical layer. And the fundamental layer is for developing evaluative literacy, I would like to call. And evaluative literacy can include evaluative thinking, defined by Buckley and Archbold, and evaluative communication, which I'm thinking of these days. And a technical layer is for advanced and specialized knowledge and skills and maybe methods. And those two layers are often interrelated. And so it's not possible to differentiate completely. But at least evaluation education needs to keep attention to the fundamental layer, not only pay too much attention to the technical layer. And I'm concerned about the current situation of my country, Japanese society, in which too much attention is paid to the technical layer of evaluation, both in practice and education. And it results in creating the epistemologically biased evaluators. And our future becomes more complex and uncertain and more interrelated and interdependent. So I believe the ability of evaluative communication is inevitable for the evaluators in the future generation. So if the evaluation education failed to nurture the ability of evaluative communication, it would create an irrelevant evaluator, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aki. And I think this was a very dense contribution, but in fact, I think people will be coming back to this recording to learn everyone's contributions, and especially that fundamental layer and the technical layer and its meaning, the meaning of our education, how also politically it matters, what kind of meaning has the education of evaluators. Thank you so much. Celeste, that's the difficult part to wrap up, but
yeah, of course. But I love this flow, because yeah, I took some notes from Yatin thinking about context, and of course I agree, Bianca, about the enabling environment with education. In education, not only for evaluation but for education. I think it's truly important, and I agree with that. And the meaning of education. So I want to, in this moment, to draw your attention to the term irrelevance. I was thinking about irrelevant not as a technical problem, but as a social one. So thinking about irrelevance, an evaluator becomes irrelevant when what? When findings are not meaningful for actors, for the community, for example. Irrelevant is irrelevant when reports are not used, or where culture, context, and our values are treated like elements when they are primary elements, So this is the first one, thinking about social irrelevance like a social problem. I remember that in my PhD dissertation, one of the findings was that over the 70% of educational programs in evaluation in Latin America lacked of this contextualizing package, the package of more qualitative method to understand context deeply, for example, or cultural responsive evaluation, or participatory methods, or the most important that I like to say is working on around the construction, as evaluators itself. So the biggest risk, it seems to be not failing to adopt new technologies, as Bianca said, new or being updated, in paradigms and methods, but the risk seems to be failing in finding or asking when, why, for whom, and with what consequences we evaluate. This is the thing I like to talk about, the sociology of evaluation, So I think one of the core competencies we need to bring here, not being irrelevant, is empathy. Empathy as a core competence to teach in our evaluation trainings, but to practice too. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Celeste. I indeed think that there's a social layers. As me being also socialist, you're very close to my heart with turning our attention to the consequences and to sociology of evaluation. Thank you all for this part, and indeed those were very thoughtful and sophisticated reflections. But let me dive deeper and ask each of you a more specific question. And maybe Celeste, with a fresh contribution, how should evaluation education evolve to ensure that each generation, youth, mid-career, senior professionals, are prepared for uncertainties of the future?
Wow, what a question. Okay, I will try. As per my experience and conversations with some colleagues in the academia, the next generation of evaluation trainings maybe should continue. No breaking down. Continue the start path, because I think the path is started. The started path from training stages to trajectories, supporting trajectories, more a kind of mix of those certifications and credentialings, like a combination, thinking about this intergenerational learning, you know. But disaggregating, thinking about younger, mid-career professionals and senior evaluators, I would say that, of course, we know that learning by doing seems to be the future. I think we agree on that. So we are talking about real mentoring. Mentoring, I think, needs to be rediscussed, you know, because it's not only about, I don't know, demanding the inclusion, not being a symbolic inclusion of young and emerging evaluators, but this is something that be just demanded, you know, but building or creating those spaces between generations. So real mentoring depends on all of us, you know. In the second place, thinking about mid-career professionals, I would say that we should unlearn to then learn. This, I think the evolve will be unlearning, because we need to rethink, revisit assumptions, reflecting, deconstructing ourselves. So this is truly important in the context of rapid changes, you know. And for senior evaluators, I think we are evolving right now to reinventing us contributions. We know, or the path should be, or be after this, of course, obligated situation to recreate ourselves, while recognizing our own experiences and the wisdom, of course, reconsidering our backgrounds, reconsidering our knowledges on how to use them, you know, how to use it. So I don't know if you could see, but I have seen a lot of colleagues in social media urging, you know, the evaluator to reimagine, make broader, of course, contribution to the field, for example, to democracies. I have in my mind now the European Evaluation Society and next conference about the support to democracies. So we need to reconsider and reinvent and reimagine our contribution. So I think this is the in which evaluation education will evolve. Thank you, and over to you, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Celeste. Bianca, could you pick up your question? And I would like to challenge you with asking about what new competences, digital, ethical, cultural, or systems-based, should be considered essential for the next generation of evaluators.
Oh, yeah, that is an important and a big question. So I think if you look across different evaluator competency documents, and lots of BOPEs and organizations have these, I do think you'll start to see themes. And so I do think there's agreement on needing to know certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So norms, guidelines, standards, evaluation culture, the technical and methodological knowledge that I think we've all been sort of hitting on, how to manage an evaluation, interpersonal communication skills, that context always matters, always, right? Ethics have to be embedded in everything we do. That there is some knowledge that is unique to evaluation, and evaluators need to know that, right? So for instance, knowledge of different evaluation theories or approaches or models, right? Or processes and procedures for thinking about how you take data, evidence, and combine it with values and standards to create judgments. There's lots of different ways you can do that. There's lots of different ways that the literature talks about that. So I think there's places where we find agreement in these documents, but I also think there are places that these documents miss that are equally important and just as important. So one is that I think we don't talk enough about is the evaluation market. I mean, I have we do respond to RFPs, we respond to terms of reference. There is an evaluation market here, right? And so you sort of need to understand that. You need to understand what the different markets are, because there are many markets and there are many layers within markets. You also need to keep a pulse on and like learn how to think about how do you recognize market dynamics, right? And then, of course, the quintessential supply and demand. What does that sort of look like? I will say, I am the editor for New Directions for Evaluation. There is a 2018 special issue that is just on the evaluation marketplace that lays some of this out. And so if you haven't ever thought about that, this might be a good place to start. There's lots of other reading you can do, but if you're persuaded by what I say, that might be a place to start. I also think 2025 was the year that I learned in a very hard and a very, very real way how important it is for us to understand and protect the connection between democracy and evaluation. And I won't sort of belabor that point because I know other panelists have made this point. I know in many ways we have been very privileged in the context in which I work to not have to think about this in the way that we have. But 2015 was a year that I think disrupted evaluation on that particular element. And then we know, I'm not going to say anything earth shattering here. AI use and evaluation is exploding. I mean, it just is. And that is the reality of the situation. So I do think you need to know what's possible. I do think you need to know how to use it, when and where to use it, always with a human in the loop. And I think you need to understand the pros and cons of AI use and evaluation. You need to understand what it helps you do and what its limits are, right? And so I think responsible AI use is an emerging competency. And I think many VOPEs, for instance, and other organizations are really starting to think about this. What does responsible AI use look like? And I think we're going to continue. I think this is the nature of the conversation that's going to be like 2026 on it. I also want to acknowledge that there are places within the competency discussion that we don't have agreement. And I think that's important because these competencies aren't static, right? We're always thinking about them, right? We're always sort of challenged to think about what is new or what is missing in what we've got. So one of the places that I will say that I've seen that, and I saw this in graduate school. So this is a conversation that we've been having for a long time, is whether one needs substantive or content knowledge about the thing you're evaluating. Some believe that in addition to developing evaluation competencies, you need to know a little something about the area. So if you're evaluating an international peacekeeping operation, you need to have knowledge about evaluation, but you also need to have expertise in peacekeeping, right? Others will say, look, being a substantive expertise is beyond the competencies needed. You can design evaluations to help sort of, bolster that, right? And they point to examples of people with evaluation knowledge and little substantive training producing really high quality evaluations, right? There's sort of, so my point here is that these competencies are always emerging. And I also want to make the point that I think developing competence is something that ought to continue over someone's career. I, even at this stage of my career, continue to develop my competence in different areas. It never stops, right? And I think that is freeing in the way, because then it's not like, oh my goodness, I have to get to a certain level before I can do this. And it's like, no, you're always going to develop it, right? And the goal is you keep pushing yourself, you keep learning. So, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bianca. This really connects very well with what Celeste said about revisiting assumptions and deconstructing and staying reflective still. And it rings the bell in my mind of the integrity and the ethics, and also debriefing every evaluation process we go through, so that we not only thinking about what values we keep and like how we should be doing something, how we wish we have done this, but also how are we actually perceived on that evaluation market? Can we be improving at what's our disadvantages and where we need to still keep on improving? Thank you so much. Aki, a question. what responsibilities do institutions, professional networks, and education systems have in ensuring that evaluator education is inclusive, future-focused, and globally relevant? And anyhow, easier question on you, but since we have all professors, or almost all our viewer professors, only challenging questions here.
Yeah, thank you very much. So such a huge question, which I want to ask you, but let me try to answer as much as possible. Well, for more inclusive and future-focused and globally relevant education for evaluators, we professional evaluators and educational institutions for evaluators should be responsible for providing the relevant framework and practical opportunity of evaluative communication as components of evaluator education. Providing the relevant framework is inevitable for the evaluation learners to open their eyes widely and inclusively. Since the evaluation study was born in the late 1960s in North America, this framework has been widely developed both theoretically and methodologically in the Northern American countries. In the course of history, particularly during the 20th century, the scientific objectivity has been appreciated along with methodological advancement, and which is a good thing, as I am also one of the social scientists, and actually I am a statistician. I'm teaching statistics at my university. But recently, in this uncertain and interdependent world, different alternatives such as, indigenous evaluation approach and decolonizing evaluation approach articulates the limitations of existing approaches and bring new concepts such as relationality and spirituality, which we sort of like overlooked for a long time. So for ensuring that evaluator education is inclusive and future-focused and globally relevant, I think it is necessary for us to reconstruct the framework to understand the concept of evaluation itself, and also share that concept, a new framework, with the future evaluators. Another necessary condition is to provide practical opportunity of evaluative communication. Not only understanding the framework as theory, but also the future evaluators need to have a practical opportunity to experience evaluative communication, because evaluative communication is not something that we can teach in class. We, Japan Evaluation Society started the certificate program in professional evaluation certificate program since 2008. And we discussed the importance of internship and practicum as a part of this certificate program. But in reality, it is not easy for us to find enough opportunities, in this practice form. So in this sense, the very practical cooperation from with professional networks and education system is inevitable, and they should become more serious, hopefully, to nurture the human resource of evaluators. Then hopefully we could create that opportunity for the evaluators' education, and in order to provide the relevant framework and then practical opportunity as a component of evaluator education, I think we have a shared responsibility to nurture the inclusive and future-oriented and globally relevant evaluators. Turn to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aki. This has been a really fruitful discussion, and the reflections are very, very dense. Let me just mention that I think also what is important is that link between the democracy and evaluation. And I think the uncertain futures and the way our field is also changing is requiring us indeed to stay adaptive and reflective and on the ground, empathetic and integral, and those interpersonal connections, not only among us as experts who do evaluation, but also with those who commission it. And how do we create this sense of trust between all parties in this process is indeed very important. Now, I'd really love to hear from you, our dear audience, what's been standing out for you so far. What thoughts or questions are coming up for you in reflection to our big question today? How can we better educate evaluators of every generation for the future? So you're very welcome to share in the Q&A or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. And to everyone joining us on the LinkedIn, we're listening to you too. Please make sure you add your questions to the Q&A section. We might not be able to see them in the chat. Yatin, have I not included you in this? Oh my God. Oh my God. I thought you were like, this is how it goes when you switch the moments. And this is the most relevant question. Joking, but of course, Yatin, it's very important for us also to understand how you reflecting on how can intergenerational learning and diverse knowledge systems, including indigenous, community-based and experiential knowledge, reshape how evaluators are prepared. And I know that from your regions, amazing experiences are coming up. So it's really fantastic that you can take on this question.
Yes, I'll break down the question. First part is how intergenerational learning and diverse knowledge systems, so different ways of learning, can help us prepare better is what I understand. But prepare for what? And that is something that I think the other panelists, what Bianca said, what Celeste was focusing upon, they also go towards that, what we are really preparing for. Are we just preparing to remain relevant, to earn money, to survive as evaluators, to do a profession? Or does a profession call for us to be useful for the community, for the last mile, leaving no one behind? What is it that we are doing? And if it is the latter that we are doing, leaving no one behind, hearing everyone's voice, giving a voice to the most needy person when you are doing these evaluations, bringing forth their stories, then we need to learn from them. We need to learn their methods. Just like this panel, we have people from different parts of the world, and we are bringing different views. And similarly, as evaluators, if you are learning from different types of people, different generations, young people, Generation Z has a completely different language today in which they speak. Unless we bring all of these together, the old people who have methodological rigor, are good in theories, good in practice, and some things, the middle people who are gaining experience, who are learning contextual understanding, and who are applying it today in the current changing context, changing scenarios, and the youth who are like digital native and who are like who will question authority, who will cross question us, who will go beyond the very obvious things, look deeper. And unless all of these different generations come together, start speaking with each other, uh, evaluation as a field is not going to deepen, and we as evaluators are not going to learn to do our role better, which is to voice the last person in the line, talk about them. And so, yes, it is very important that intergenerational learning happens. And once it will start, people will come together, talk to each other. My own experience working with the WOPEs and Evalue chapters in this region has been that when we have worked in teams where there are seniors to guide us, we young evaluators to actually deliver, try out something new, take the risk, experiment, but at the same time have someone to control our experiments and say that whether it will succeed or not, and like bring together the wisdom as well as the energy and all these different aspects together. That is how we learn, that is how we go ahead, that is how we stay prepared. At the same time, when we look at indigenous communities, different cultures, different community people background, unless we hear their voices, their lived realities, understand in their context, we are not really going to do the value-based judgment that we talked about. Bianca also earlier mentioned. Uh, we will not really be able to make those comments. And to learn to be able to do that in a better contextual situation, We need to appreciate the different contexts. So we need to learn from different communities, indigenous knowledge systems, their way of looking at the world, problems, their conditions is completely different. I'm working with a rural community in India. Most like our rationality says that if you're looking at their general health, mental health question, we are doing a GHQ analysis. Plus, we are also looking at their anxiety, depression, etc., and also looking at their hopefulness for the future. Our general rationality will say that someone who is not really doing well on the mental health scale, who is showing signs of depression, anxiety, would eventually also do poorly on the hope scale. They will not be very hopeful about the future. But the reality is that everyone is very hopeful, because unless they have hope, there is nothing other than hope for them. Unless they have hope, they will not be able to survive. So they're very hopeful. And this is a very different context, very different reality on the ground. And unless we are able to appreciate these different realities, different cultures, different ways of thinking of people, I do not think that the findings that will bring about, as Celeste was earlier saying, that is our output to remain relevant, it has to be useful. What we do has to be useful, has to be in the context of the people. And for all of that, I feel that is why it is important that we have diverse knowledge systems and intergenerational learning to remain relevant and to be prepared to take on new challenges. Of course, at the same time, we cannot be prepared for everything the way the world is changing right now, but we need to learn with each other, be resilient through that community from different people to be together to face any eventuality and be prepared in that sense as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yatin. Indeed, we didn't want to miss your contribution and putting our attention to questioning authority and creating a safe space where we can be critical and reflective among many different stakeholders, really not to lose any person, the most vulnerable, to, as you beautifully said, to voice the last person in the line is very important. And there's just so much of discussion, at least in my region. I think it's a third decade when we're discussing the trust in evidence-based policymaking. That is so very relevant. And I think also to this, adding to what you said about having that technical knowledge, but also being reflective about realities in which we practice our profession, about being empathetic. I think this is really important, not only to have, in addition, often that field expertise where we need to kind of evaluate specific things, but also to learn multidisciplinary from other fields where we have that kind of stakeholder engagement in other fields, right? How can we still continue to learn better, to be with each other? And that's that interpersonal skills that Bianca was mentioning as well. We have a beautiful comment on Q&A, but we do not have any specific questions. And thank you for your gratefulness for this sixth dialogue. What I would like to propose is that we would switch to the quick comment round now. And before we close, I'd like to invite each of the panelists to really reflect. And since we have a bit of time, maybe not 30 seconds, but let's give a minute to everyone, because that takeaway now, a concrete action or some key takeaway is very important. But if you want to cross-connect with other speakers, you're very much welcome to do that. Something that you want to share also with our very wonderful audience, and that every one of us can carry with us, and we can work together to shape how evaluators of every generation are educated for the future. Bianca, would you like to share first?
Yeah. Good. I saw Celeste's hand up, but Celeste, if you're okay,
Yes,
I'll go. Yeah. Okay.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think what I would say is, and hopefully you can see how I've gotten here based on what I've shared. I think it's really important to stay curious and to never stop learning how to be a better evaluator, no matter how many years of experience you have. again, I am saying very publicly, I continue to learn how to be a better evaluator every day. And part of that is my recognition that our knowledge is not static, right? We're learning new things all the time. New technologies are being developed, new ways of thinking about things. Something happens in the world, it makes us think about things differently, right? So I think that's really important. The other thing I'll say, because sometimes this is hard to, like sometimes evaluation work feels hard, and it is hard. I mean, I really do think good evaluation work is hard. And so what I would also say is don't shy away from the tensions, from the contradictions, and from the messy bits, because it can also be really messy. Because my own experience, and I think what I also see with my own students, who are either getting a master's or PhD or certificate. I run a certificate, is that lots of learning happens in those spaces where there isn't an easy answer, right? Where you really have to think through something. So I know it could feel hard in the moment, but don't shy away from it. If you just stick with it, you're likely gonna learn something really, really important, not just for that context, but moving forward in your career. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much, Bianca. Aki, what's your takeaway?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. Well, regarding the learning opportunity, for the intergenerational learning opportunity, I would like to make some additional comment, and then I would like to share some experience from my background, if time allows. Well, I think we can learn not only from the explicit approach, like from program or from the university or whatever, but also we can learn from the implicit approach, like the participation or involvement in a participatory evaluation process itself can be a school for evaluation learning. So in that sense, not only maybe we are always learner as long as we are committing to the evaluation process with somebody, the partners from the local context. Like in my experience, actually, I'm working some fields, and one of my field is like a primary school doing ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, and I worked with this primary school for the last 8 years. And then they started to develop the ESD evaluation. And then, originally I supported the teachers over there. And then I worked with teachers there. And then as time goes by, for the last 8 years, the teachers started to get involved, not only themselves, but also like children, parents, and then also the local residents and so on. And then now actually I am going to visit them this Sunday again. They have a evaluation workshop. The youngest generation is 6 years old, the first grade. And then the oldest, well, probably 60, 70 years old. And they are literally working together and exchanging idea. And then, they are literally learning to each other. And then, of course, I myself is always learning from their, the commitment. So I think, we have a lot of opportunities. I mean, the evaluation activities itself have a lot of opportunities for learning. So I think it is important for us to recognize that fact first, and then try to take the best advantage of this opportunity to be our evaluator. So I believe that evaluators can play a significant role for the value co-production among people with different values and different epistemologies. So this role of evaluators will become increasingly larger and more important in the future world of uncertainty and interdependency. So I want to say that let's improve our evaluative literacy, like including evaluative thinking and evaluative communication together. So thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Aki. Celeste, I know that you raised your hand, but I will give you the privilege of wrapping up this round. And I want to very much make sure that I've included Yatin, so I'll give him the floor now.
Thank you. So about 11 years ago, when I was trying to enter the field of evaluation, I was trying to see what needs to be learned, what skill sets I need, what I need to do. As just a development professional, so I had this confidence that the substantive knowledge, the field knowledge of different sectors that is needed, of on-ground practice that is needed, I had that. But I wanted to learn how to do evaluation and be recognized as an evaluator. And while preparing for that, everywhere I was looking, it was like either statisticians or economics people were the ones who are being invited to even apply for jobs in evaluation. In the last 10 years, the situation has changed in India. People from different backgrounds are now eligible. They focus more on the skills that are required. They talk about whether you know about theory of change, whether you know about have some auditing evaluation experience and so on. So that has started to change in the past few years. And that is very crucial. Like when you're preparing for the future, focusing even when it is coming to jobs or opportunities to work in teams, especially every evaluation. There's this very interesting comment in the ES conference a couple of years ago online. I was lucky to attend it. Evaluators typically work as teams, so not one person needs to be an expert of every single thing. Different people can be master of different things, but we all need to be able to appreciate each other, learn from each other, work together, work in teams, understand, be empathetic, have the same moral values, and so on. And so I feel that if we start bringing in together people from different generations, different cultures, different backgrounds, different expertise, and we work together, we will function better as evaluators, as individuals, and in the end, we will achieve what we hope to achieve, which is to change the world for a better future. Yeah, that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yatin. That inclusiveness is really something that not only makes it more diverse, but also really enriches us. I very much agree. Celeste, sparkle, please.
Thank you. I have two brief comments about all the first comment, Landry Dijou, sorry, about this, and of course agreeing with Yatin about this is crucial. As I said before, just don't forget, or please think with us collectively about co-creating those spaces, not just for mentoring, maybe new spaces, and thinking about them, reimagining them, because I think, yeah, mentoring will be again as a symbolic one if we don't think about it a little bit or deeper, maybe as an intergenerational co-creation with new forms, So this is my first comment or my first thought about this. And about the comment on LinkedIn, I want to link it with something that I think Bianca said about markets, because the thing is that when we are preparing our evaluation programs in different stages or in the trajectory of evaluators, the thing is that, yeah, we need to prepare it for the market, the system asks for it, so we need to prepare for it. But maybe we need to think differently as part of the national, for example, our national evaluation system, and co-create with governments, with the international cooperation, and etc., NGOs, etc., those programs, because I was thinking some days ago about evaluation in the private sector, evaluation in NGOs. So maybe we are working a lot in evaluators and theories and paradigms for the public sector, for example, and to work all together. As I say, as a political scientist, public policies work with the private sector, with NGOs, with the international cooperation. So we need to prepare something more, co-creative between among us and between us. So That's the way I think, because if we create only programs, just only the curricula, just for a need of a government, governments are changing in our global south, are changing a lot. So we need to prepare it for a more extended time, thinking as part of the national evaluation system at least. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Veronica.
Thank you so much. I think this continuous cross-pollination is very, very fruitful, and it makes us receive more comments and more questions. Maybe not always I notice them, but indeed I think in the spirit of collaboration and co-creation, as Celeste said, open the floor to any of the panelists who would like to pick up some question or comment in chat and Q&A on LinkedIn. And answer it now.
So I saw that there was one question about AI. Sorry, I was just looking for it. Lillian says, thank you for the insightful session. Just wondering where evaluation education fits within the evolving IT and AI landscape as the intergenerational changes required integration of emerging digital tools. Yeah, so I think we're all in a space where we're recognizing that generative AI in particular is changing all kinds of things, including evaluation, right? And the kinds of competencies one needs and those kinds of things. So there's a couple of places that I think are. So one, I do think as I said, I do think you need to know about AI, generative AI. What are the ways in which you can use it? Those kinds of things. If you are new to this conversation, right? Like you've heard of generative AI, but you were like, okay, but I'm also trying to just understand what this looks like in practice. I am going to put in the chat a link to a completely open access free book. It is only in English, so that is a caveat, but it is open access free. It was published in 2024, so some of the stuff is actually already outdated, believe it or not, but it's called Artificial Intelligence and Evaluation, Emerging Technologies and Their Implications for Evaluation. So there is a chapter, for instance, in there that talks about the competency area, but there's also examples in this book of the ways in which people are experimenting with integrating generative AI in their evaluation practice. And I think use cases are incredibly, incredibly important. And in fact, the other thing I can tell you is sometime in the next year, I don't know exactly when yet, there is another book coming out. It is, again, open access, open source, only in English, unfortunately, but you won't have to pay for it. You can actually get it, you'll be able to get it for free on the internet. That book includes 28 use cases of using generative AI in evaluation, from inception phases all the way to reporting, communication, those kinds of things. And I think that is helpful because I think understanding sort of how it can fit in the landscape, the entire evaluation process, right, I think is really important. That said, you can't let go of your critical thinking. Whether you want to call it critical thinking, you want to call it evaluative thinking, whether you want to call it the fundamental thing. I love that sort of distinction. You still have to think about what does it mean to use these tools responsibly, right? And so I think that brings up questions like, who gets to decide whether or not we use AI in this evaluation? Is it only the evaluators or the commissioners? Or do those whose data we're going to use in this system also get to have a say in that, right? How do we think about letting people know how we're going to, I do think you need to let people know that you're going to use AI. So how do you do that, right? So you can't sort of let go of the ethical, of the moral, of the need to think critically about these technologies. This is why I think responsible AI is so important. Merletech has been doing a number of things on responsible AI. I'll also put a link into that. So that's my answer. Great question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bianca. And that's a kind reminder to all of the panelists, whatever you would like to share with our public in the chat and after this session it's a great idea to share resources and materials. Anyone else wanting to pick up some question or comments? Celeste?
You know, I'm reading Gabriel Kinney comments here about indigenous approach. I think more, especially Yatin, in this approach, and me too in Latin America. And I think we are working a lot to engage indigenous systems in our curricula. So this is truly important. And I completely agree with you, Gabriel, about the shifting the rhetoric to reality. We are trying to work from reality, from practice, and learning, you know, learning from indigenous systems of education and evaluation. So yeah, maybe we can stay in touch to continue this conversation. So thank
you so much. Are we picking up any other question or chat? Because I think we will need to be slowly wrapping up and saying goodbyes to our audience. Thank you so much, everyone. And I think that last sentence really resonates with a lot of what has been said, Celeste, of shifting the rhetoric to realities. In uncertain times like this, we need to take responsibility of being a human evaluator and not shy away from being human evaluator, because that's still very, very relevant, whatever the digital tools we are using. Thank you so much for all of the learning. There has been a lot of praise in the chat for the teaching and really calling us to action and reminding us of how much we can learn together for the future of evaluation. Let us not treat evaluation education just as a transfer of techniques, as it was said, but as a cultivation of the judgment. Judgment is really important in connection with ethics, with our responsibility of a profession and care for the public good. Our call to action today is simple but profound. Let's build learning spaces in universities, organizations, VOPEs, and in our communities where people are not only trained to produce findings, but formed by exercise wise, ethical, courageous judgment, and are equipped with skills to facilitate the use of evaluation results for transformative change, as Yatin has been reminding us. Because in the world of increasing complexity, the future of evaluation will not be secured by smarter tools alone, as Bianca was saying, but by thoughtful, reflective, and deeply responsible evaluators who create and sustain communities of learning and can bridge the gap between evidence and action. And that's both what Aki and Celeste were saying. Thank you so much for being part of that future. As we come to a close, I want to offer a heartfelt thanks to our wonderful speakers, and to our partners who made it possible to meet for us, and to everyone who has been part of this rich and generous conversation today. The replay will be immediately available as a gift from UNFPA Independent Evaluation Office LinkedIn, and it will be available on the LinkedIn page. This was the 6th of the Future for Evaluation Dialogues, and we are very much hoping you'll continue this journey with us when we gather again for the 7th dialogue next month. You'll find the registration link in the chat and then on the Eval for Action organization. As you go back to your own work and communities, I invite you to carry with you the spirit of what we shared today. And it was so dense and so rich, a commitment to learning across generation, to thoughtful use of new tools, and to keeping evaluation grounded in care, equity, and public purpose. Once you leave this webinar, there will be a short pop-up 2-question survey. Your reflections really matter to us, and they help us shape those dialogues going forward. So we would be grateful if you could take a moment to complete it. Until we meet again, thank you and take a good care.